Hello and welcome to the Foster Dad Directive podcast. My name is Charles, and today we'll be actually talking about fostering and having your first bio kid. I want to go over this topic because it's something I've seen repeatedly. It wouldn't bother me so much if it was like a one-off thing, but it hasn't been. So I kind of want to go over why I think it's not okay to bounce a foster kid just because you're going to have your own kid, and what to consider while also having your own child. It's a twofer, kind of got to put them together just because I can't see doing an episode on each solely, but hopefully it'll be more than enough info that I have for it. As always, please remember I'm not a trained professional. The views expressed on this podcast are my own. Always seek legal advice, especially if you're outside of the state of Michigan. You want to best protect you and your family. So, no updates. I'm doing the second episode trying to get caught back up, and then I want to get ahead. So, if my outfit doesn't change, that's exactly why. So, there's no real updates from the last episode. In this one, I'm going to talk about Elle. That's the first foster kid we had who was the independent living one, leaving a placement due to being a high needs child. When I say child, but she was 18 and a runaway. So it was I can see why when the family was going to have their own kid that they did seek to have her removed, just because the last thing you need is to try to be finding a foster kid while also having your own child, but you also may never know. I wasn't fully aware of everything going on in the situation, and it might have started happening once she ended up finding out they were going to have their own bio kid. And I apologize if you hear a mower in the background. It literally just started. So I'm going to try to power through and see if I can hear it afterwards. And then the second one we had seen was another potential respite we were going to get that was being removed due to the family having their own bio child. And then the family got upset because the teen had acquired a marijuana vape and then demanded the removal sooner. We ended up not getting her. They found a different respite house for him, and it turned into being a good fit from what we know. She's still there. We haven't got any like word on trying to take her again in as a respite, so good signs hopefully. But there are a lot of things outside of this to consider when having your own child while being a foster parent. I see if you're trying to have your own child, you should phase out any foster kids. If you don't plan on fostering or adopting for the long run, it's just kind of sleazy to me because these children build this bond, and then if you're bouncing them once you find out you're having your child, then it just seems like they are expendable and replaceable, and you never really cared about them. So how are they going to build bonds with other parents in the future? You got to balance that desire for your own biological child while already parenting these kids, because it's a big emotional toll, ethical, logistical, and family dynamic in general. Because these kids, a lot of them don't know a stable family outside of you, and then if you throw a infant in there and then show them as replaceable, it's going to kind of devastate their whole world all over again. And a lot of these kids have been through a lot and really do not deserve that. So, what changes when a foster parent decides to have their own biological child? What should you take into account for it? Is it possible to meet everybody's emotional needs while unintentionally creating imbalance? So, there's a lot of things you actually have to think through beforehand. And you always want to make sure if you're keeping them in the long run or looking for adoption, make sure you know that they're not being replaced, that you're adding to your family dynamic instead of replacing them, and that they're not going to be loved more. I can't, off the top of my head, remember what comedian it was. I think it was Cy Amundsen that was talking about. No, it was not. It was Andy Woodhull, I think, was talking about having stepchildren and comparing them to a biological child, and it'd be like if you bought a boat compared to made a boat with your genitals. If you haven't heard it, please go out and listen to it. It is absolutely hilarious. I believe it's Andy Woodhull. I apologize if not. It's Andy or Cy. Both are great comedians. So, one of the main things to focus on is the emotional impact on foster children. A lot of them are already in therapy, have been through a huge amount of traumatic neglect, trauma, all sorts of things that most of us never have to go through, or we kind of have some of the resources that these kids don't have because a lot of them go through emotional trauma on top of being neglected, starvation, not having their medical needs met, a whole landslide of things that add on top of this. So you want to consider that you're making sure they're not going to struggle with the attachment, abandonment, or feeling like they're only temporary. Don't be that person who bounces them just because you're having your own kid. Think this stuff through because you're a sleazeball if you do. I'm not really sorry for saying that. 100%. If you let a kid get attached to you and then do that, it's unforgivable in my eyes, honestly. A pregnancy can trigger fears of being less important. How the child might interpret it is they get to keep this one, especially if they're foster kids and don't know about their future or are going back to that place of trauma, that they weren't enough of a kid to make you happy, or that they're just practice for this new kid, which is all super sad saying it out loud. It was a lot easier to read, but especially I couldn't imagine with the two girls we have now. I think they'd be kind of excited, but I also think they would fear a lot of this stuff, even just being 7 and 9, because that's a huge thing to put on their shoulders, especially if you're going through court dates and everything. Because they're going to notice things such as the shared last name, the family resemblance, different legal statuses. You can do things with your biological child that you can't with them, such as family vacations. You can take a biological kid out of state. It's a lot harder to take a foster kid out of state. And then permanent milestones. So all these different things kind of get clumped into one big thing, and a kid sees this. They may not voice it or know how to voice it or know exactly what they're seeing, but they are going to notice this. So you're going to want to take things to reassure them, maintain their belonging in the family group, and then take extra training, especially trauma informed. We've taken a few different ones. Unfortunately, after we've had a lot of the more, I don't know how to say this, the ones that have been through more trauma and needed that training more, we unfortunately got it afterwards. Otherwise, things might have come out differently, especially because you want to avoid that ours versus theirs, where the infant is from the view of a foster kid, theirs is in yours, compared to it being ours and it is in our family unit. You're gonna want to make sure you show them that affection. But I mean that comes with any new child, even if you have your own biological child. You always have to keep in that affection, opportunities, and then traditions with the kid. I've been trying to build bonds with the girls. We actually got one of those practice writing books. Oddly enough, I'm gonna have to do a whole episode on it because my penmanship has actually been improving since we've been starting to do that, because you trace the letters and then it'll go to fainter letters that you trace and then you do it on your own. And I've noticed my penmanship at work is actually improving. So I bought 3 books, one for each of the girls and one for me, and we sit and we do the page together. Nobody gets up and leaves when they're done. We all just sit there and practice more until the last person's done. I'm telling you, if you're looking for a way to get your kid into school, because they actually ask to do that, the 9-year-old does, asks to do it almost every morning. So it's been a huge, huge plus. And helping them read, we do the word, like A was ant, so I had them spell it, and then they spell it to me. So definitely something to consider. If anybody wants, I can post it at some point when I do get some listenership. You're gonna want to think of the financial strain with foster kids. You do get a payment to help with their stuff. I know when we had the toddler, between daycare and all of his necessities, we spent way above and beyond, because those things get expensive, especially with the rising price of everything. There's going to be loss of work time, space. Do you have enough space to have another child while also fostering? Are you going to keep those bedroom requirements for the fostering license? And then vehicle size. That's why my wife has a 6-seat vehicle, because we wanted to make sure if we ever have a kid or get another foster kid or another two, I don't, four would be, four kids would be the absolute limit on my sanity. But you got to take those into effect. And then time, court dates plus newborn care, appointments for all of them. The girls right now have two appointments each per week, therapy, and then meeting with the 9-year-old meets with an enhanced foster care, and then the 7-year-old has something else. I'm spacing on it. I've been up for quite a while now. I worked last night and then I'm staying up trying to kind of flip back my schedule so I can spend time with them tonight. But you have to remember there's a lot of appointments, especially for an infant. I know when we got the toddler, I was exhausted from appointments. Thankfully for the girls, we're caught up on everything, so it's mostly maintenance from here on out, such as doctor's appointments, well child appointments. Yeah, and then all of that. So you gotta try to ensure you realistically support the foster children and the infant without burning yourself out. And I can tell you just from foster children, it's very hard to do. And you're gonna want to keep all these in your mind, especially with the licensing and agency policies. There's a whole bunch of different things you have to consider, such as how permanency of the foster children will impact, future placement types, the infant that you're having. Maybe should you pause placement of new children? Are there safety concerns for an infant with high need placements? And then any regulations around sharing bedrooms, such as genders, ages, and all that. It's all stuff you really, really have to consider. So, big suggestion, and this is just what I've seen. We're obviously not having a kid. I mean, marriage and relationship stress is a huge one. We see it now, and we don't even have an infant. We're not going through all that. Fostering is intensive as it is, and then pregnancies and postpartum are a big thing to look out for. I know my wife has a family member who was very prone to it. Their mother was prone to it, then they've had a kid and had another kid on the way, and it have the postpartum hit insanely hard for them. So I couldn't even imagine if they were foster parents. And then exhaustion, emotional strain, and then trying to get everything done between two people for all that different stuff. It's just absolutely insane. It's one of the reasons I've been trying to pick up more of the work for my wife so she doesn't have to do all of it, such as appointments and insurance and all that. And then you also have to think about the future of your biological child too. Do you want them, and I don't want this to sound bad, but being in the chaos of a fostering family, because there are so many unique things about a child growing up in with foster siblings. They're going to have to see that you're showing them like empathy, compassion, flexibility, social awareness. High needs foster kids, are they combative, assaultive? Do they swear? You're gonna have to think of all that because you are having a little tiny individual who is vulnerable. Because there was one kid who injured our cat that I'll go about over in the future that we bounced that day because if I can't trust you around our cat, I can't trust you around a 3-year-old that can't talk and tell me if you're injuring them. And if you're hurting my cat, I don't really want you around anyways because there's really no reason for a 17-year-old to injure a cat. I get you've been through a lot and you've had a very traumatic past. Does not forgive it at all in my book. I can see a 3-year-old like hitting a dog and correcting them and talking, explaining what you can, but a 17-year-old, I'm sorry. I got a lot of sympathy for a lot of the kids we've had, but the injuring of animals for somebody who's a teen and mentally knows better. Like he wasn't delayed or anything or at a lower age than what he physically was or biologically was, if that makes any sense. So, and you're always going to have the potential struggles of your kid getting attached to having the foster kids leave. I mean, if they get attached and are become friends, what's going to happen when the kid leaves? Safety boundaries, sharing your attention, like I've mentioned earlier, exposure to traumatic behaviors, like I just stated. So you're going to have to consider if you're going to raise your child in an essentially revolving door environment. In 3 years, we've had 8 or 9 placements of multiple kids that have left at different times. So that's a big thing to think about. And then you're going to have to try to treat them the same and not show preference to one child over the other just because one's biologically yours, and try to maintain that equal like punishment. Sorry, I'm reading over some of my notes again. I read through them before, but I just wanted to make sure I'm looking through them again. And there's always, you always have to plan for the worst case as well. Uh, Big ones are, what if you can't have a biological child, if you're attempting and you have fertility issues, pregnancy complications. I mean, nobody wants to think about it, but if you lose the child during the pregnancy, what should you do then? And the toll that's going to take not only on you, but a kid who doesn't know any better, who kids think some of the most random things are their faults, divorces, so there's no reason that they might not think that losing a pregnancy might be their fault too. So, and all of this isn't to be pessimistic, it's protecting yourself. Honestly, I wouldn't even bring this topic up really if I hadn't seen it twice already, and who knows how many times it's happened before, just because fostering is a big thing to undertake. I'm not trying to pat myself on the back and say that I'm doing amazing. I'm learning every day. I've been reading books. I've been doing the books with the handwriting books with the girls, trying to set time aside for them. I didn't even take a nap today because it got so late in the day that I don't want to oversleep, because if I go to sleep too late, then I sleep longer than I want. So I'd rather stay up and be able to spend time with them. It's a huge change for me. I mean, it's been one of the most beneficial changes, honestly, and a lot of learning and trying to go out of my way to figure new things out and come out with new solutions and be a better parent, and learning from, how my parents raised me compared to how I want to be as a parent. So it's one of the biggest things is planning, or trying to plan, because if you don't and then you get caught in the chaos of not having planned, it's going to be so much worse when you do get caught in some of these issues. So, pretty much all you can really do is make your foster kid feel at home and let them know. Talk to them on their level of what they would understand. Like the 7-year-old has asked us, not exactly about, it might have been if we had our own kid, but she was asking if we got other foster kids, what would they be to them? And my wife's like, they'd be your sibling. Yeah, and what if, I believe that she asked if, what if we had our own and it'd be your sibling too? It's just, I think one of those things, especially with adoption coming up for these two, is they are concerned about that and don't really. Well, the 7-year-old enjoys the idea of becoming part of our family, and the 9-year-old I really don't think understands what family is, just due to her delays. So it's good to sit down with them and reassure them that they are still going to be a part of your family, is in terms of what you can, especially if you don't know what the future holds. Try to word it based on there. But honestly, if you have a good caseworker, talk to your caseworker, assess your finances. You don't want to put financial strain on your foster kid on top of having a child. Go through your support system. If you have parents, siblings, anybody that can help out. Make sure you kind of go over the news with them, and make sure you have plans for them to help out. Consider finding more about your foster kids' past traumas, especially before you take them in. Hound the agency and make sure that they give you the full information, and let them know that you're trying for your own and that you have to worry about their safety, and how you make sure you and your spouse know how discipline's going to go between the two, and that if you're going to discipline them the same and not treat them differently. And then make that plan on if you're going to stop fostering, at least stop in a healthy manner and don't just bounce the kid. Make sure you do it in a way that's not going to make them feel like they're just essentially useless or trash or being thrown out because they're not biologically yours. I'm sorry, that's a little sadder than it's a lot easier to write this stuff and then but in then to read it out loud it gets a bit sadder than I imagined it really would be. So honestly, if you're going to take this step, don't let it move you away if you're fostering, but also plan ahead. Just make sure you're considering all this. So I wanted this episode mostly to focus on honesty instead of the guilt, and just acknowledging that wanting a biological child doesn't make you a selfish foster parent, but thoughtful preparation is essential for every child involved, because that's the best way to create healthy little humans that turn into, future politicians, doctors, lawyers, and stuff like that. You're going to end up saving not only yourself a bunch of pain and hurt, trauma, but also the kids involved on all sides, and the people that they interact with down the line. So your actions today make a huge difference on these kids tomorrow. But I do want to thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed the topic. As always, please like, subscribe, and share. Email me at fosterdaddirective@gmail.com. I don't think I said the email in my last episode. You can send any feedback, ideas, or stories in. As I stated in the last episode, working on the books this weekend. There's one I'm reading for the Foster Dad group I joined, along with three others. One for the adoption book, one for the book of the gentleman that reached out to the podcast. Oh, and the 5-second rule book. I don't have it with me right now, but that one I listened to that on a different podcast and seemed like it'd be good. I think, like a more of a motivation type book. So, as I'm starting to do, my dad joke of the day, or the episode, the week, since I'm doing these weekly. Did you hear about the guy who drank invisible ink? He's at the hospital waiting to be seen. Oh, and those are on today.com. It's 300 best dad jokes. So that's going to be the list I'm going off from. I'm going to pick the ones that make me laugh. But just know, no matter what decision you make in this, just make the one that's best for you. Your emotions and health also matter. So don't think I'm like hounding on don't be cruel to children, or you're going to make a bad decision no matter what you do. It's not like that. Your desires and dreams and stuff all do still matter, even when you're fostering or being a parent in general. Just remember that your sanity matters too. And finally, may your kids' chaos be funny after 5 minutes and not 5 years. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week.